Hello friends, and welcome back to a new video. Today I am so excited to be sharing with you all my fall TBR as well as some fall book recommendations. I am so eager for the fall season. It is my favorite season and I just can't wait. I can't wait for all the books that are perfect for the cozy and chilly months of the year. These are my favorite months from September through December. They are my favorite months of the year and I am just so excited for them. I know fall doesn't start for another few weeks, but I don't care. I really want to get this video up and I have kind of started decorating. The little pumpkins on my shelf are probably not going to stay exactly where they are. I have a lot more decorating to do. I actually have a bunch of fall vines just on my bed and a lot more decor around that I want to start putting on my shelves as well as around my bedroom. I get so excited when fall rolls around, when the weather starts to get chillier, and I'm especially excited about all the wonderful books that I can read during this season. I'm a huge mood reader, but I did want to make a list of some possibilities, so it is more of a pile of possibilities than a TBR. I uploaded a similar video last year and I'll have that linked up above as well as down below, and it is basically an autumn book list. It's a list full of recommendations as well as books that I was interested in reading last fall, and I'm gonna try and do my best to not repeat books from that list. There may be a few repetitions, but besides just a few, it's going to be a new list of books that I would recommend to you and books that I'm interested in reading for the fall season. I actually had a pretty hard time finding books that are clearly set in the fall or have a very autumnal cover or just scream fall to me. So not all of the books on this list feel or look like they're set in the fall or look autumnal per se, but just based on my reading tastes and what I know I like to read at different times of the year, I feel like this is a perfect list for me and a great list to work off of. And it is a pile of possibilities, like I said, so I won't get to all of these books, which is completely fine. And a little off topic, but I feel that I need to mention this precious Charlie Brown t-shirt. It has pumpkins on it. It's the Great Pumpkin. And I love it. I just needed to mention it because it's a fall recommendations and TBR video. It's a very autumnal shirt. I needed to mention it. I also want to mention that in October, it is Victober. So that's a readathon where we read Victorian literature. So none of the books on my TBR / pile of possibilities are Victorian classics because I will film a separate video for that at the end of September. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and dive right into the list of recommendations. It is a shorter list than the one I had last year. The first book here I do want to mention, even though it does kind of have Christmas vibes as well as fall vibes, it's that perfect time between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I need to recommend it, and that is Apple Cider Slaying by Julie Ann Lindsay. This is so far my favorite cozy mystery. I haven't read very many of them, but it is my favorite currently. And we basically have a woman named Winnie and her grandmother, and they run this apple orchard / farm in West Virginia. But it is struggling, and they decide to try to save the farm by starting up this festival, only their nemesis ends up murdered on their property and the mystery goes from there. Now, I know this book is called Apple Cider Slaying, but the apple cider vibes in this book are absolute perfection. This book is just looking at it, I feel like I can smell apples and apple cider. It is perfection. If you're looking for a cozy book that you can read while drinking a hot cup of apple cider, a perfect cozy book set on a farm, also featuring 2 adorable cats, this is a perfect one. And it's perfect to read around Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving leading up to Christmas. This is a great one and I had to mention it. Next up is Midnight on the River Grey, and I actually DNF'd this book just this month. But I did want to mention it because just because I DNF'd it doesn't mean it's not a good book and that it wouldn't work for someone else. For me, it was just a case of the fact that it's in first person, and with historical fiction, I do tend to struggle with that. And it was definitely just a me as a reader issue, but I do have to say the writing was extremely evocative. And this book is basically about a woman named Rebecca who She has to move in with this man who is now her guardian. She basically has no other guardian. Her parents have both passed away, and her brother also experienced a very mysterious death, which she believes was actually caused by this man who is now her guardian. But she has to move into his home in the country, and she really doesn't trust her new guardian, and she's trying to figure out what happened to her brother and how he died and things like that. And there are definitely some gothic, spooky vibes and very autumnal, cold, dreary weather vibes. And it is set in the Regency era in England. If that sounds interesting to you, I would definitely recommend trying it out. This next book, I believe, was actually set in the summertime, but there's just something about it that feels perfect for this transition from summer to fall. And it has to do with the tone of the book. And I'm talking about The Haunting of Bonaventure Circus by Jamie Jo Wright. This is a book that is set in a circus in the 1920s, as one of the timelines is set in the 20s, and then we also have present day. In the 20s timeline, we have a girl named Pippa who is trying to figure out why she is getting these really strange messages from someone called the Watchman. And she seems to have some connection to the circus from when she was a baby, and she's trying to figure out what those connections are and who the Watchman is, and it's very, very unsettling and sinister. There have also been multiple murders, so there is a serial killer at large, and Pippa is also trying to figure out what on earth is going on with the circus that stops by her house quite frequently. Her father has some ties to the circus, and it's just a very, very eerie kind of setup for the 20s timeline. And then in the present day timeline, we have Chandler, who is trying to figure out some things about this old mysterious train depot. And she's a realtor, so she spends a lot of time in this depot, learns some things about the circus's past, and she's definitely roped into some of the dark and sinister secrets of the circus from the 20s. So definitely a good one for spooky season, for the fall time. I would highly recommend. This next one I just read in July. It was a reread, and I talked about it quite a bit in my July wrap up, so I'm not going to spend time talking about it at all, but I read Persuasion again for the second time, and I had forgotten just how autumnal this book is. There are definitely references to the fall season, and it's definitely a great Jane Austen book to read in the fall time. A lot of people recommend Northanger Abbey, and I would definitely say that one as well, but I definitely think this one is quite autumnal, so I just wanted to mention Persuasion. If you wanted to read a Jane Austen book in the fall, this is definitely a good one. This next one I don't have to say much about, but if you have yet to read this book, I would highly recommend reading Dracula in the fall time as well. As a person who hates vampires, and I really, really don't like vampires, I've never liked reading books with vampires, watching movies with vampires, it's just not my thing. I loved this book. And it's not because of the vampires. I think it's because of the characters and their struggle and what they had to go through, and the fact that this is also epistolary, so it's told through journal entries. I loved it. I don't want to say too much about what this is about. I do think going in knowing as little as possible definitely elevates the reading experience. But it does start off with Jonathan Harker, who goes to Transylvania to meet Count Dracula. The reason being Dracula is wanting to buy property in London, and Jonathan Harker is going to help him out in that regard. But some things start to happen in this castle that Jonathan Harker is staying at, in Dracula's castle, and then he goes back to England, and things really, really go down. So it's a really, really fun book, perfect for fall, and just such a fun 19th century classic. I really, really loved this. Another classic I would definitely recommend is The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. This is one of my favorites out of all the Sherlock novels, and just the Sherlock canon, I guess, in general. And this one is set at Baskerville Hall, where there are rumors that there's this like demonic beast that's been roaming the moors, basically. And the owner of this house suddenly passes away. Sherlock and Watson are called to figure out what happened, and it goes from there. This is very atmospheric, very spooky, very fun, and perfect for fall as well. And I have one last book to recommend, and that is The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle. This one kind of has a fantasy twist, if you will, in just the way that the story progresses and the way that the plot occurs. So I'm just going to read the summary. It is quite short, and I think it describes the story perfectly without giving too much away. So it says, somebody's going to be murdered at the ball tonight. It won't appear to be a murder, and so the murderer won't be caught. Rectify that injustice, and I'll show you the way out. It's meant to be a celebration, but it ends in tragedy. As fireworks explode overhead, Evelyn Hardcastle, the young and beautiful daughter of the house, is killed. But Evelyn will not die just once. Until Aidan, one of the guests that has been summoned to Blackheath for the party, can solve her murder, the day will continue to repeat itself over and over, every time ending with the fateful pistol shot. The only way to break the cycle is to identify the killer. But each time the day begins again, Aiden wakes in the body of a different guest, and someone is determined to prevent him from ever escaping Blackheath. This book is also set in November, perfect time to read the book, and it is just such a fun one. I've never read a book quite like it. I really, really enjoyed it, would highly recommend. All right, and moving on to my pile of possibilities. First up, we have The Cider Shop Rules by Julie Ann Lindsay. So I mentioned Apple Cider Slang earlier, and then I read the second book earlier this year, and this is the third book in the trilogy. Just by looking at the cover, you can definitely see why this is a perfect fall read. And I'm gonna read the summary. It doesn't spoil anything for the first two books, which I love. And I think for that reason, you can read the books out of order. It doesn't really matter. There isn't like an overarching plot line for the three books. But this says, the Fall Festival is in full swing. Civil War reenactors from 3 counties are partaking in Blossom Valley's tribute to John Brown. Blue Ridge Mountain foliage is in full bloom, and best of all is Jacob Potter's pumpkin farm, where his hay rides, piglet races, pumpkin picking, and corn maze are time-honored draws for locals and tourists alike. That's why it's such a shock when Mr. Potter is found dead, hidden under a tarp in the back of Winnie's pickup truck. This certainly betrays Potter's reputation as one of the town's most popular citizens. Fortunately, when it comes to solving a murder, no one has a patch on Winnie. Now, all eyes are on her to do it. Unfortunately, that includes those of the killer who will do anything to keep an orchard full of secrets buried. I am so excited. This one is definitely a must for this fall season, and I can't wait to read it. Unsurprisingly, I have quite a few more mysteries to get through, and this next one is also a cozy mystery. I'm not sure if I'll get to it, but it definitely feels like a great fall one, and that is Death in Castle Dark by Veronica Bond. And this one doesn't specify what time of year it's set in, but it is pitched as a gothic cozy mystery, so definitely intrigued. There's a nice condensed summary at the top, and I'll just read that. It says, actor Nora Blake finds her dream job when she is cast in a murder mystery troupe that performs in an imposing but captivating old castle. When she stumbles upon a real murder, things take a nightmarish turn in this first book in an exciting new series. I also love how the cover makes it look very dark and stormy, and I'm really hoping I can get to this sometime in the fall. This next book is the first in a series, and I initially put book 4 in the series on my list, not realizing that it was the 4th book in a series. And I'll put the cover up of the 4th book just to show you how beautiful it is, first of all, and how autumnal it is. So I saw this book cover and I was, captivated. I'm like, I have to read this in the fall time, and it is a middle grade cozy mystery. And I've heard amazing things about the book, and then I realized it was the 4th book. So I'm gonna go back and start with book 1, and even though it's set in the winter time, I really want to read it this fall. And who knows, maybe I'll just end up binging the rest of the series in the fall as well. And the first book here is Absolutely Truly by Heather Vogel Frederick, and it is the first book in the Pumpkin Falls mystery series. And this is set in the winter time, I believe in January/February. Book 2 is set around the maple harvest, and book 3 is in the spring or summer, and then book 4 is set in the fall. So maybe I will binge the entire series. If I don't get to it this fall, that's fine. I really want to prioritize this, and honestly, it's called Pumpkin Falls Mystery, so that's totally okay. There's something autumnal about this book. And so this one says, at almost 6 feet tall, 12-year-old Truly Lovejoy stands out in a crowd whether she likes it or not. She doesn't. So when her family moves to teeny tiny, super boring Pumpkin Falls, New Hampshire, Truly doesn't stand a chance of blending in. But when helping out at the family bookstore one day, Truly finds a mysterious letter inside an old copy of Charlotte's Web. And soon, she and her new friends are swept up in a madcap treasure hunt around town. While chasing clues that could spell danger, Truly discovers there's more to Pumpkin Falls than meets the eye, and that blending in can be overrated. That sounds so cute. I really want to read this, and I hope I love it. I hope it's a hit. So that is Absolutely Truly. All right, and next up is a book in a series that I have decided to just read the books that I own. So it's a very long series. I am just not gonna read all of them, and thankfully I've been told you can read the books out of order. It doesn't really matter. Yes, you miss out on some character development, but at this point I don't really care because it's a cozy mystery series and I'm here more for the vibes than anything. And the book I'm talking about is Black Ship by Carola Dunn. So this is a Daisy Dalrymple mystery. I believe this is book 17. And I've read the first 5 books, I think, and then book 11 I read last Christmas, called Murder and Mistletoe, or Mistletoe and Murder, something like that. And I just don't really care to read every single book up until book 17 to get to this point. I know that our main character has a love interest and eventually things are going to progress, so it is what it is. I'm here for the vibes, like I said. I will read the summary for the back, but if you don't want to hear the summary because you do want to read the series, then maybe skip ahead. But I was assured you can read them out of order. So this one I have decided to read because of the cover. It feels kind of fallish, you know, the falling leaves and everything. And this says, in 1925, the Honorable Daisy Dalrymple Fletcher, her husband, Alec Fletcher, a Scotland Yard detective, and their infant twins moved to a larger house on the outskirts of London proper, which is in a state of slight disrepair. Set in a small circle of houses around a communal garden, it seems a near idyllic setting, at least until a dead body turns up half hidden under the bushes of the central garden, and rumors of bootleggers, American gangsters, and an international liquor smuggling operation via black ships turns everything upside down. It sounds like a fun and simple cozy mystery, and I did really enjoy the books that I have read from this series. It's one of those series where, like, if I'm in the mood for it, I'm glad to pick up one of the books, and I'm not too attached, but I do find them very fun. I need to include a Jamie Jo Wright book in this pile of possibilities list, and out of the newer ones that I have recently bought, this is the only one that I feel really fits fall for me. I just read one of them, and then the other one is set in springtime, I believe. And this one is set in August, but I do think it would be a great fall read, and that is The Premonition at Wither's Farm. For some reason, I always associate corn and this kind of farm vibe with the month of September. I don't know why. It just, this book cover and the colors, it's just September for me, so I think I will read this in September. But this one says, the voices of the past cannot stay silent forever. In 1910 Michigan, Pearliette is a self-proclaimed rural healer, leaving the local doctor convinced she practices quackery. It doesn't help that her mother is a spiritualist who regularly offers her services to connect the living with their dearly departed. But when Pearliette is targeted by a superstitious killer, she must rely on the local doctor and an intriguing newcomer for assistance. In the present day, Molly's life has not gone the way she dreamed. Facing depression after several miscarriages, Molly is adapting to her husband's purchase of a peculiar old farm. A search for a family tree pulls Molly deep into a century-old murder case and a web of deception, all made more mysterious by the disturbing shadows and sounds inside the farmhouse. Pearliette fights for her life, and Molly seeks renewed purpose for hers as she uncovers the records of the dead. Will their voices be heard, or will time forever silence their truths? I'm really excited. I just read The Souls of Lost Lake this month, and I'm very excited for another Jamie Jo Wright. She honestly delivers. Her vibes are great. Her writing is great, and I really, really enjoy how she tells a mystery. So very, very excited. This next book is one that I actually wanted to read this past weekend, but my sister decided to read it, and she never reads, so I was more than happy to let her read it, and she loved it. So it's making me even more excited to pick it up, and that is The Last Time I Lied by Riley Sager. I have read a couple of his books and very much enjoyed them, so I'm definitely looking forward to this one as well. I don't want to know too much about this one, but I know this one is kind of dual timeline in a sense because we have present day and then 15 years previously where some sort of disappearance, I think, happened at like a summer camp, and then in the modern timeline, in the main timeline, we have a woman who's trying to figure out what happened, and that's all I want to know going into it. So hopefully I'll get to it sometime in September, but knowing how much my sister loved it, it's making me even more excited to read it and very much looking forward to it. Next up is another cozy mystery called A Doom Full of Sugar by Catherine Bruns, and the cover is absolutely precious and very autumnal. And this is the first book in the Maple Syrup Mysteries series, and this one says, there's nothing sweet about murder. Layla has always believed that everyone loved her father as much as they loved his artisanal maple syrup. But when he's killed and she returns to Sugar Ridge, Vermont to take over his business, she starts to realize how much of his life she's left untapped. With her brother under suspicion, her mother just barely holding it together, and police not producing any leads, Layla will have to investigate herself if she wants answers about her father's sticky end. But the more she learns, the more she worries that there won't be a sappy ending to the story. Those puns though. And it says it also includes 5 delicious maple recipes for mystery readers with a sweet tooth. So perfect for me. And this next book, I am dying to read it. absolutely dying to read it. And that is Man of Shadow and Mist by Michelle Greep. This is the second book in the Of Monsters and Men duology. And this one says, England 1890. Vampires are alive and well in North Yorkshire, least wise in the minds of the uneducated. Librarian Rosa Edwards intends to drive a stake through the heart of such superstitions. But gossip flies when the mysterious Sir James Morgan returns to his shadowy manor. The townsfolk say he is cursed. James hates everything about England, the weather, the rumors, the scorn, yet he must stay. His mother is dying of a disease for which he's desperately trying to find a cure, an illness that will eventually take his own life. When Rosa sets out to prove the dark gossip about James is wrong, she discovers more questions than answers. How can she accept what she can't explain, especially the strong allure of the enigmatic man? James must battle a town steeped in fear as well as the unsettling attraction he feels for the no-nonsense librarian. Can love prevail in a town filled with fear and doubt? I need to read this book. The first book in the duology kind of had Frankenstein vibes, and this one, it seems to have Dracula vibes. So definitely need to get my hands on it and read it. Next up is The Silent Companions by Laura Purcell. So I read a book called The Corset, but my edition has a different title and I'm totally blanking on the title right now, but I'll put it on the screen. It does have two different titles depending on whether you're getting your book from the UK versus the US. But I read this book last year in the fall time, and I'm definitely interested in trying another Laura Purcell. She writes gothic historical fiction, and I really enjoyed the one that I read last fall. So this one, The Silent Companions, I've heard is like one of her best, and I have been wanting to read it for a while. So it says, when newly widowed Elsie is sent to see out her pregnancy at her late husband's crumbling country estate, The Bridge, what greets her is far from the life of wealth and privilege she was expecting. When Elsie married handsome young heir Rupert Bainbridge, she believed she was destined for a life of luxury. But with her husband dead just weeks after their marriage, her new servants resentful, and the local villagers actively hostile, Elsie has only her husband's awkward cousin for company, or so she thinks. Inside her new home lies a locked door, beyond which is a painted wooden figure, a silent companion, that bears a striking resemblance to Elsie herself. The residents of the bridge are terrified of the figure, but Elsie tries to shrug this off as simple superstition. That is, until she notices the figure's eyes following her. And this is pitched as a Victorian Gothic historical fiction. So I tend to be weary with ghost stories, but there are definitely some authors that I trust, and this is also one that Jamie Jo Wright has read and loves, so I definitely need to read it as well. Next up is a Christian contemporary romance, which is not my thing. You all know that, but the title says it all. It is called Autumn by the Sea by Melissa Tagg, and I know a few of my friends here on BookTube have read it and absolutely adore it. So I'm gonna give it an honest shot. I'm gonna try it. If I don't like it, it is what it is, but I will give it a try. I'm actually gonna go into it blind. I don't know what it's about, and I don't want to go in with unrealistic expectations, and I just don't want to go in with any expectations, so I'm going in blind. I believe it is set in Maine during the fall season, and there is a little bit of a mystery, so I'm intrigued for that reason. And like I said, no expectations. I'm gonna see what I think, see if I like it. I'm very picky with contemporary, and we shall see. If it's very autumnal, chances are I will enjoy it at the least. I forgot to mention, I will also be starting Little Women in November, but I usually drag that into December, so I just didn't include it on this list. But when I do start it in November, I also plan on reading Marmee. I might actually start this before starting Little Women, but this is Little Women from the perspective of Marmee, basically, from what I know. I've heard amazing things about it, and we don't really get into Marmee's brain, into her psyche, and into her emotional state and all of that in Little Women. Little Women really is about the sisters, so I am just dying to see how the author tells Marmee's story and her perspective on what occurs in Little Women. And oh, I can't wait to read this book, and it is beautiful, and maybe October, early November, I'm hoping to get to this one. So this is another one that is a must. And then I have 3 more books that I am planning on reading all together, kind of like binging them. And I am talking about the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy. The 3rd book is coming out at the end of October. So I will be reading the first book, Once Upon a Broken Heart, then the second, The Ballad of Never After, and then the 3rd one, A Curse for True Love. So these 3 books will get read sometime this fall, hopefully, and I'm very, very excited. They're just so magical and so whimsical and so fall/wintry. They're perfect for this time of year. And I can't wait for the third book, and I need to reread these. I feel like I forgot quite a bit from the first two books, so for the third book, I need to revisit the stories, and I'm very, very excited. And that is my list. That is my list of recommendations and my very large pile of possibilities for the fall season, keeping in mind that I will not get to everything. I will definitely be reading a lot of books that are not on this list because my mood is all over the place and I find other books that pique my interest, and I may have completely forgotten about some books that I had originally planned on reading in the fall. Things just change so quickly in my brain. My moods tend to change quite frequently, especially when it comes to reading. So we will see what happens from September to November. As always, if any of these books are books that you have read and you've enjoyed, please let me know in the comments. Let me know which books I should prioritize, which ones you would recommend I prioritize. And honestly, if any of these books I've mentioned are books that you think I wouldn't enjoy, because I know a lot of you are familiar with my reading tastes, let me know. I'm open to hearing it. I don't want to waste time if I'm not going to like a book. So please do let me know in the comments. And that is it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. It means the world that you take time out of your day to listen to me ramble. Thank you so much. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye.